So, can we start? What do you think? It's already 10:03. Yes, is everything okay? So, we still have some participants joining the meeting. I would like to welcome all of you. Welcome, guys who are joining now. We are carrying out some final technical adjustments here so that we can start. Let me see if we had about 60 people that registered to take part in this event, okay? I believe that before we start recording, we could explain to everybody. I don't know if they know how to use Zoom, if they know how to use the interpretation tool that we're going to use, okay? So those who have already joined us, we're going to have simultaneous translation that is already happening. And at the bottom of your screens, you're going to find three dots or a globe, and then you can choose either English or Portuguese. You can choose any channel. I'm going to speak Portuguese all the time during the entire webinar. And our two speakers, they are going to speak English, okay? So the interpretation is being done from Portuguese into English for the speaker's sake, and from English into Portuguese for the audience, okay? And so you have the Q&A. Q&A is the channel or the place where you can write down your questions. And we also have the chat that you can use, okay, if you have any problems. And at the end, we're going to have a few minutes for a Q&A session. Can we start? So, Fernando, are you recording now?
Yes, the recording is on.
So I'm going to start now. I'm going to start. One more event on water resources on the agenda. I'm from the ABRHidro, the Brazilian Association of Water Resources. Thank you so much for being here today and that are being part of this recording. This is a special webinar, okay? And we're going to record this event today, and we're going to make it available on our YouTube channel right afterwards, because we're having the simultaneous translation from Portuguese into English and vice versa, because we have two international speakers. So we are interconnecting three continents today: Europe, the USA, and Brazil. So Europe, North America, and South America, okay? And today we're going to talk about the levees, okay, to stop floods, and also governance aspects, security and safety aspects, and economic safety and security. A very, very important topic, mainly because of disasters that we had in the south of Brazil last year. And lots of debates have arisen because of that, okay? My name is Alain Vaz. I am the Deputy Coordinator of the Technical Committee of Dam Safety here at the ABRHidro. I also have my colleague Cristiane Batiston and Sara Cruz. She is the coordinator of the Technical Chamber of Dam Safety and the National Council of Water Resources. I would just like to explain to you after my initial remarks, my welcoming remarks, I'm going to pass the floor to Cristiane and then Jussara, and then we're going to have two very important presentations. Thank you so much, Mr. Remy, for being here today. He's from France, and he is the chair of the Dike or Levee Committee in Europe. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about his bio, and Richard from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, okay? He's from USACE, and they are highly involved with the dikes and levees. He was involved in the reconstruction of the levees near New Orleans because of the Katrina hurricane. And so we have these two presentations today. So thank you so much for being here today. And I would like to pass the floor to my colleague, Christiane Battisson. Hello, good morning, Alain. We are recording the event today, this morning. We are having the water or water resources on the agenda. I am coordinating this discussion moment. Thank you, ABRHidro, the Brazilian Association of Water Resources. Thank you for creating these opportunities for us. And they have the largest water resources symposium, but they also promote webinars and other moments so that everybody can join us, discuss the topics. We can have a discussion with our speakers, and these topics are extremely relevant for our society so that we can evolve the way we manage our water resources. Hello, Jussara Cabral. She's a great activist of water resources, and she works a lot at ABRHidro. Thank you, Dr. Remy. Thank you, Mr. Varuzo, because they kindly accepted the invitation to be here with us, making their time available so that they can contribute with the reflections we're trying to carry out here in Brazil. They were very, very generous. They were very, very generous to do that. Thank you so much for your generosity. And so levies is a topic that is extremely relevant for us to start discussing this in our society. The floods that happened in the metropolitan area of Porto Alegre in 2024 showed to us that we have to think way more about these structures to protect us from floods. We almost lost. Well, we had 2 million people impacted in a huge area became underwater. And so we had 15,000 cases of leptospirosis. Homes were highly impacted. Thousands and thousands of homes were destroyed, and about 146,000 people were displaced, and 50,000 of them lost everything they had. Between damages, losses, the impact of this natural disaster were over 88 billion reais, and the resources that were only given by the federal government, shared by the federal government, was over 11 billion reais. And we need to have new management ways and responses to these natural disasters. We have to invest. We have to invest. This is a world consensus. When we invest in prevention, besides protecting lives and assets, the costs are way lower. But in order to do that, we need to change our culture and mainly and also the importance that we have, okay? In the case of the state of Rio Grande do Sul, for the disaster management, many instruments had to be developed quickly. New aids were created so that we could give a response and help the population. And a specific fund that was called FIDES that had 6.5 billion reais, and now we already have over 7 billion reais that were used to adjust, adapt, besides building more protection systems. But what we saw is that even areas that were already protected by the levees, they were impacted, greatly impacted. So we have many questions here to reflect upon. Are we doing a safe and adequate management of these structures? Does the government know and exercise the necessary control over these structures? Those who are in protected areas of the levees, are they receiving warnings about the possible disasters? So, what we have nowadays is an opportunity for us to get to know the international experiences a little bit, obtain subsidies so that we can go deeper down into our debates about floods and levees and how we can work better to improve safety for our population. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you, ABRHidro, and thank you to our speakers. Thank you very much. Perfect, Chris. Yes, you talked about it, how important it is for us to debate these topics. And we also have the technical committee of the ABRHidro that is here to foster this kind of debate so that we can improve the safety and the management of our levees. Now I would like to pass the floor to Jussara. She is the technical coordinator and she's also responsible for taking care of our dam safety policies. Jussara, the floor is yours. Hello. First of all, good morning. I would like to make my words Christiane's words. And so the importance of this kind of program, of initiative that ABRHidro is having, this initiative coordinated by Mr. Alain Vaz. And I would like to greet the two international speakers, Mr. Richard and Mr. Remy, for your availability. As Christiane said, how kind of you to be here with us, and mainly because we are really, really expectant and anxious to hear from you, to hear about the experiences that you have had, you have been having in these moments that we are reflecting about our situation, our safety structures against floods. So, thank you so much for being here with us today. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the CNRH. So, the National Council of Water Resources carries out the regulation of our dam safety policy. Our dam safety policy placed the levees, well, according to their initial definition, it says that dams, they are structures that have been built along a body of water, but it's not clear if all of the levees or dikes they were included. But according to a decree that was passed in 2022, this became clearer. So the levees and the dikes, so the levees to contain floods, they are part of our legislation. And this brings to us many, many challenges at the National Council because we are responsible for regulation. We have some specific issues regarding that, such as the liability of the business people or the contractors. So since the levies are part of this legislation, they're going to have many, many responsibilities. Dam safety plans, frequent inspections and monitoring. And this is also going to represent an increase in responsibility for the regulatory bodies. And we have another issue. According to our legislation, the monitoring agencies, they get the concession and the right to use the water resources. And the levies, in many cases, they are not under concession. So there is a need for us to regulate this issue. And we don't know exactly if the correct level is the National Council, but we're thinking about this matter right now. Another issue that results from all of this is that we have a dam registry, and this dam registry also includes information of the classification of that dam. If that dam is part or fits into the policy or not. And this classification We already have rules and regulations for the dams, but for the levees and dikes, no. And the constructions are a bit unique. So we have the challenge of revising our regulation or amending it to establish criteria that are going to make a sense when it comes to this kind of structure. Therefore, these are only a few topics that I'm mentioning, but we're going through a moment right now that is extremely intense in terms of discussions. And this meeting, after this meeting, I'm sure I'm going to share some ideas, I'm going to share some suggestions so that we can enrich our debates at the council. And I would like to thank you beforehand, okay? Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Jussara. It's very important for us to emphasize the role of the CN RH, okay, the National Council on Water Resources. So regarding water resources and also dam safety, and this is a connection that we must carry out. The levees, they are important structures to protect our population. Historically speaking, we're going to see this during the presentations in the USA, in Europe, in Brazil, to protect our populations from floods, but if they are not well taken care of, the risks increase. So it's important to listen to the experiences that we have. And I would also like to mention that this event is a preparation for the Brazilian Symposium on Water Resources. It's the main event that is going to take place in Vitória, the capital of the state of Espírito Santo, during the last week of November. We're going to have a round table to continue having this debate there. And during this round table, we're going to have important people that have been historically contributing to this debate. Yes, we have a gentleman from the National Water Resources Agency here in Brazil, and Mr. Miguel Soria, who is the CEO of the Committee of Large Dams. And if he arrives, we can talk to him. And we're also going to have a representative, right, Jussara? Professor Joel from the IPH Research Institute from Rio Grande do Sul, and he's representing the scientific committee to study the disasters. It was created after the floods. He's going to be there at the event with us. And Mr. Josimar Alves, he's our coordinator of surveillance and monitoring of the dams. And he's also here online. Mr. Bruno is also here. He is the superintendent, Mr. Rebouças. He is responsible for dam safety. I'm not going to mention all of you, but a few people who are here. Without further ado, I would like to pass the floor
Without
to
Without further ado, I'm going to present here Remy. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup. He's speaking from France, Paris. Remy is an engineer, specialist in dikes, protection of dams. He works at CEMAGREF, the previous CEMAGREF. Ever since 1989, CEMAGREF now is called INHAI, an Institute of Scientific Technological Research for the Environment and Agriculture, and also a teacher from Aix-Marseille Université, and is the vice president of the French Committee of Dams, Reservoirs, and chair of the Dikes Commission in the International Committee of Dams and Dikes, and he also works on dikes and defense against floods, and it's also an advisor of the French Committee for Dams and Waterway Structures. Has been working for long with this issue, and I would like to pass the floor to you, Remy, to talk a little bit more about your experience. You have a vast curriculum that he already placed here, but due to the time, I will pass the floor to you. Feel free to salute also everyone and to complement your biography and to perform your presentation. Thank you so much. Remy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alan, for this introduction. I won't say much more about myself right now. Maybe during the presentation itself, I will add some personal details about what happened at some points. I want to thank you for the invitation to talk about levees, which is my main topic of work, as can be seen in the introduction you just made. And I'm happy to be here and to share experience, and I hope it will be useful for you. Also, I had some quick information about the situation in Brazil now, and I hope this will only be the beginning of a cooperation that we can maintain in the long term with the different people involved with levees, because I'm very happy to work on levees and levee safety in different countries. So I will start my presentation. I think, yes, it's okay. I will talk in general about levee systems used for flood protection, and particularly in the way to have the system safe and performant in terms of flood protection. So my presentation will be in a few parts, as usual, introduction and conclusion, starting with general issues, problems with levees, and a path toward better levee safety and performance. I understand this is your main concern in Brazil today. Some example of technical guidance, not in detail, just to help you find these documents if they may help you, and a list of hot topics in terms of research and guidance, because we still have a lot of things to learn about different aspects, and I will deal with that. And at the end, I have listed a series of important references with, if possible, web links, and so you will be able to access these documents. So as an introduction about levees, not so short introduction, about definition of levees, quick comparison with dams, and also how the levees interact with flood risk. So levees are based on the work that was done in the International Levee Handbook. It was the first collaboration on the issue of levees. Levees are raised, predominantly earth structures, to provide protection against fluvial and coastal flood events along coasts, rivers, and also sometimes artificial waterways. Actually, a levee by itself doesn't provide protection. It's part of a bigger flood defense system, as you can see on the drawing, that may include different levees, but also different type of other structures, even natural features like dunes or other type of infrastructure. Sometimes a road or a railway can be included in the levee protection system. Sometimes levee are called by other local names, dikes, flood defense embankments, and even in some other English-speaking countries with strange words like bunds, stop banks. In France, they are mostly called digues, but locally on the Loire River, they are also called levees. Levé, sorry, with the French accent. Same word, different pronunciation. Well, when we talk about levees, we have to compare with dams, because I understood the talk about your legislation in Brazil. Levees are part of the dam legislation. But in hydraulic function, usually dams have a flood storage function. Dams keep water in, and levee systems, on the other hand, prevent water to reach a protected area. So there may be in some way an opposite function, even if both retain water. One is to keep water in, and the other is to keep water out. And in terms of flood management, both dams and levees can help manage flood at the catchment scale or locally. They have complementary roles. Levees and dams have many similarities, but also many differences with dams. I won't read all the text that is on the screen, but the ICOL technical committee that I'm chairing is working on a bulletin comparing in detail dams and levees in order to benefit from all the literature for dams, about dams for levees and also about levees for dams. One of the main issues is that in many countries there are no regulation related to levee safety. At least that's a situation up to some point, and I will get later to the creation of this regulation. Dams and levees use the same techniques, the same scientific disciplines, geotechnics, hydrology, hydraulics, civil engineering, but when you look into the detail, there are some differences, so that I like to say they have different recipes with the same ingredients. You can see one also of the main differences between dams and levees. On the screen, you have a cross-section of a Dutch levee showing that it's very heterogeneous because of the history, because of the long length. So many differences and a different complexity. Some data about levees in the world. We published in ICOL the bulletin 196, based only on about 20-25 countries, and we estimated the total length of levees across the world over 500,000 kilometers. I hope the statistics will be more precise in the future. At least 20 countries have a major levee portfolio of over 1,000 kilometers of levees, and some of the oldest ones were constructed over 4,000 years ago, in China in particular. These levees provide flood risk reduction to over 700 million people, 10% of the world's population, protect several trillions of dollars in property and economic value, preventing billions of dollars in economic damages across the world each year. But this protection has limits, because the water can go above or around the levee system. If you look at the map on the screen, you can see the Orléans levee system. In red, you have the levees. There is two ways for the water to normally flood the protected area. First, there is a spillway upstream. It's made to prevent the breach on the levee system, but also the levee system is not closed downstream because there is a tributary, the Loire, and so this area is protected until the water goes above the spillway or through the opening at the end of the system. But also, in many cases, levees are breached, even sometimes before it's overtopped, for instance, by internal erosion, and that's the case in many old levee systems. So levees in some way mitigate the flood risk. They change the risk, but they do not eliminate it. And we also have to notice that from a natural hazard, which is a river flood or the sea event, we have then a combination of a natural hazard, but also a technical hazard, which is the failure of the levee system. And we have also to understand that the breach in a levee is much worse than natural flood because of different factors. One of them is a quick event with high water level. So very important water discharge, water speed, water height, which would not be the case if the water was rising with the natural flood. Also, populations behind the levee, they think they are protected. The bridge is not expected, so they are not prepared. Unlike when there's a slow water rising, the limit of protection is not understood generally by the population. And also because of the presence of levees, there is development in flood-prone areas because they are less frequently flooded. Only the major floods cause problems, but people can forget this can happen. In France, in order to understand and deal with these problems, we introduced the concept and definitions of protection level, safety level, and also danger level. Protection level is a level until which the protected area is not flooded. The safety level is a level until which the levee failure probability is neglectable, and the danger level is the level above which the levee failure is highly probable. And considering independently the safety level and the protection level is very important in terms of proper risk management. Some other countries are progressively adopting this approach by opposition of a simple safety standard. In a safe levee system, the safety level must be above the apparent, which is geometric protection level, which is the level until which the protected area is not flooded if no breach occurs because the levee is overtopped. These concepts are, when you think about it, are quite easy to understand, but sometimes they are overlooked because people tend to think, well, the levee is there, it's protecting. But I will get back later on the way to deal with this issue. Now, the second part of my presentation, general issues or problems with levees. So this is based on a general situation in many countries that I had the chance to analyze, to talk with people, and we collaborate to either the ICOL Technical Committee or the European Working Group. And these issues are sometimes mostly related to the structures or to the management. And we also talk about the question of what is the failure of a levee or a levee system. The main issue, the main problems with levees are caused because existing levees are often old, very old, and also aging in the time, and also heterogeneous, as we have seen on this picture. To give you an idea of the age of levees, I talked about the Chinese levees being 4,000 years old. In France, we have levees dating up to Charlemagne Emperor, which is about the year 800, so more than 1,000 years. Another issue is that many levee systems are not resilient to overtopping, and soon after they are overtopped, a levee will fail and cause a major catastrophic event. So you move from a protected situation to a very dangerous situation, which is not good in terms of risk management. The performance of the levees is uncertain because they are old. There are no regular assessments. In some situations, there are even a lack of awareness about the existing levees, locally or even sometimes at the nation scale. There is a lack of information about specific levees, about their design, their constructions, what happened in their history, repairs, who owns them, who manage them. The management is often inappropriate and even sometimes no management at all. That's what we call the orphan levees. There are issues related to animals and vegetation. It is often the case that old levees are invaded by burrowing animals and big trees. And also the fact I already told that in the protected area there are more and more people and properties, so the consequence of the flooding increases. Some pictures you can see on the left, the vegetation was just grown on the levee that can cause problems like internal erosion, breaches caused by the wind, animal burrows, and also lack of management in the joints between on the right between the concrete slabs, and a lot of management on the gates can create sometimes problems of geotechnical problems or water management problems when the flood occurs. So when we started to work on the International Levee Handbook and we started to discuss failure, we realized that unlike dams, we have to consider two definitions, two variations of failure, what we call the hydraulic failure, which is a failure of the protection function, which happens when the protected area is flooded before the intended level of protection is reached. And the structural failure, which is more classically when a levee breaches, well, it's pretty obvious. Hydraulic and structural failures are not independent, but it's important to identify them and deal with them separately in a functional approach and in a risk management approach. Also, we have found that levee failure modes are complex scenarios or processes, and usually a levee system failure is functional. A levee system failure is a scenario analyzed in terms of hydraulics, in terms of flooding, while a levee segment failure is structural and is analyzed in terms of geomechanics, if it's an embankment levee, which is the case of most of the levees in France and in many countries. Some example of complex levee failure scenarios. We have on the screen two scenarios initiated by scarring, which happens during normal water levels. So on the left, you have the levee, well, the word in the screen is dike. Scarring causing collapse of a now unstable part of the levees. This can happen at any time. You don't need a flood. And the other scenario on the right, you have scarring, which occurs during the normal water levels. Then you have a flood. Then the flood recedes, and the water side of the levees become unstable, and there is a sliding of this part that can cause also a breach. Two other examples of complex failure scenarios for levees involving the different internal erosion mechanisms. I don't think I really have the time to explain in detail all these two scenarios, but you can see that the different mechanisms of internal erosion actually happen successively in the same place or simultaneously in different locations. One of the references at the end of the presentation present in more detail this very interesting new concept. It's called actually failure paths for levees. Now, the other part of my presentation, the more positive part, is how to deal with this situation. In many countries, in many places, regions, countries, states, there is an existing portfolio of old levees that are not safe. How to have this portfolio become safe and reliable in terms of flood protection. So there are different steps. What I will present here may sound like to give lessons to countries like Brazil who haven't started this process. It's not like us. We don't know better. We all came from the same point. This is based on an experience from countries that went to this process, and we found when discussing at the international level that most of these countries follow the same path between difficult situation to better levee safety and performance. And most of us still have a long way to go for levees to become as safe as dams. It takes a long time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort and continuous effort. So this was just a warning. Maybe sometimes I will say things in a way that still you have to do this, and if you don't do that, it's not good. It's just the things that we found along the way and that we want to share with other colleagues in the world. So, rediscovering levees usually, and I understand it may be the case in Brazil too with the Porto Alegre catastrophic event. We rediscover levees because there is a catastrophic event, and it is a history of many countries. Again, I will not read everything that is on the screen, but you can see the events that started the awareness about levees and the levee management and levee safety policies in many countries. I will talk later about the France in more detail, but as you can see, for most of these countries, these are the events that initiated the process of better policy for managing levees and flood risk. You can see the oldest ones are 1953 North Sea storm surge that affected different countries, Belgium, Netherlands, and even United Kingdom. But for the other countries, it's much more recent. It's more likely at the end of the 20th century that things started to happen. And our colleague from the USACE will talk about Katrina probably better than me. But actually, Katrina was the start for the levee safety policy in the USA, but it was also the start of the international cooperation on levees. I think that's when I started to work with other countries. The US colleagues invited people from different countries of Europe in Budapest, in Hungary, 1 or 2 years, I don't remember the exact date, to a symposium, and we started to exchange information, and that was the beginning of the international cooperation that gave way to the writing of the International Levee Handbook, and later to the inclusion of levees in the activities in the International Commission on Large Dams. I will come back later to that. So, as you can see on the screen, you have sometimes a lot of casualties, a lot of damage. I don't need to insist about the catastrophic side of the consequences of levee failures. I will say it again, much more dramatic than the natural flood if the levees were not there. So after this catastrophic event, floodings, we found that in most of the countries, levees were often forgotten or at least improperly managed without a national policy, left to local initiatives, poor management. So what happened after these floodings? Actually, there are two types of strategies, a real strategy and a quick strategy. First possibility is to only repair the damage, close the breach, repair the damage, sometimes build the levee stronger and higher. And this has been common in the past centuries. In France, we have archives about the flood events from the 18th and 19th century, and that was done in the past. But we noticed in the 20th century, when the floods occurs, well, repair were made, but as they were not properly managed, they were not safe anymore, tens, decades or centuries after the repairs. So the second strategy, which is the right one, is to have a long-term strategy for proper management to guarantee performance. Building and repairing levees in a strong structure is not enough. There is a need for management in the long term. So to improve the situation, there are two scales. According to the situation of the country, local stakeholders, the regulation, and the willingness of the country officials or the local officials, it can start at the local scale or at the national or regional or federal scale. It depends, as it's not the right way. It can start in one side and follow on the other scale, or from bottom to top or from top to bottom. At some point, you need to have all responsible persons at the local and national scale involved. And there are two main axes to improve levee safety performance: the management and engineering. The lessons learned in terms of organizing governance: levee need proper management. Management must be organized at the system level. The system level, as you have seen in one or two of my diagrams, it's a system that protects a protected area, a consistent hydraulic function of protection. These systems must not be split between different management organizations, because it will be inconsistent, and sometimes what is done on one side is useless because it's not done in the right way on the other side. This can be at the local initiative, the organization of management, or a national decision. Sometimes even a specific regulation is needed. It's important in any case in the long term to have a national framework defining roles and responsibilities. It can be similar and coordinated with dams, but it needs also to take into account the differences between dams and levee systems. Unfortunately, proper management needs funding. The funds need to be secured for the long term. I say unfortunately because it's easy to forget that after 10, 20 or even 50 years without floods. So it's some difficulty. We are improving the situation in France and in many countries, but who knows what will happen in the future. We have to remind ourselves permanently that risk has to be managed in the long term. There is also the need of properly trained staff. The role of managers of levee system, local management, their function is to ensure that the levees will be able to perform as required during any flood event, ensuring the defined protection, no flood until the protection level, but also not aggravating the flooding of the protected area in case of a breach, structural failure, or any other type of functional failure. I will just give you an example of a functional failure without structural failure. If you have gates to close during a flood event, you may have levees and opening in the levees with gates that you need to close. Well, if you can't close the gate or if you forget to close the gate, this is a functional failure. There is no structural failure, but anyway, you will be flooded before the protection level. Or also when the water level exceeds the protection level, you have to be sure that the flood resulting when the protection level is reached will be acceptable, will not be worse than the natural flood. So for this, regular management needs to clearly define its organization. Managers need also to manage data, the information about the levees, about the events, because it's needed in the future for repairs, for assessments. Emergency preparedness is important in order to maybe make emergency repair to avoid breaches during a flood. Conduct regular inspections, safety and risk assessments. Based on these inspections and safety and risk assessments, conduct follow-up actions like maintenance, major repairs in case of large damage, and even sometimes changes in the system. Creating new levees, moving a levee, creating a spillway, and so on, so on. And also an important part is in terms of communication with the population, for the population to be aware of the risk and to have the right attitude during a flood event, but also with the authorities in charge of public safety, so they can be ready to act in case of something unwanted happening on the levee. Then we have the high-level policy measures, so at the national, federal, regional scale. This is important to follow this order. The first step is to start an inventory of structures, of levee systems. What are their functions? What is the protected area? What is the protection level? And also including a quick safety assessment and a quick risk estimation and evaluation. This is to better understand the situation and to make decisions at this national scale. The second step is to organize legislation, regulation, or whatever national framework of organization exists. We found that there are different types of laws and regulation in different countries. Anyway, the important thing is to organize governance in order to avoid orphan levies, that the governance must be at the right scale of systems. Important thing also is to secure funding in the long term. It's not enough to decide that such or such type of organization will be responsible. We have to be sure they will be able to get the money to do it. Managing flood risk also needs to be consistent, not only with the protection structures like levees and dams, but with all the other flood risk management instruments like land use, like emergency safety organizations, a lot of other flood risk management, which is not the topic today, but it's important that to consider that levees are not the only solution and only instrument, and it needs to be consistent with the rest of the flood risk management policy. Levee management task can be defined by the regulation. The technical requirements also in some way. For instance, in France, we require that for Class A levee systems, we have 3 different classes. Every 10 years, a risk analysis needs to be made, including a detailed safety assessment of the structures. So this is a technical requirement. An example. And also think about the links with other regulations that may be sometimes contradictory. Sometimes we have environmental regulations about ecology, about protected species, trees and animals that can be difficult to follow in relation to the safety. And finally, the control. The control is important. The manager needs to do his work, but it's also important that some control organization from the state, from the region, from the at the higher level is controlling the action of the local managers. So the picture presents two examples of databases that have followed the national inventory, USA and France. It's important also that the levee system are resilient, so not fail before the designed protection levees, and also not fail immediately or soon after this level is reached. So it is important that the safety level that I talked about earlier is above and sometimes largely above the protection level. Levees should resist to all mechanisms, external erosion, internal erosion, sliding, and also to the failure scenarios involving different mechanisms up to a safety level largely enough above the protection level. This can be obtained by controlled flooding above the protection level on specific levee segments that are made resistant to overflowing. So this is very important because it's sometimes difficult to accept, but it's the only way to avoid catastrophic flooding, and by allowing controlled flooding with a lot less water quantity, water speed, and damage. So in the picture, it's existing spillway on the Lez River levees in the south of France. And the diagram, you can see the protection level is a green line, and above this protection level, water goes above the spillway in the protected area in a controlled way. And you have a safety level until which there is absolutely no breach possible. So you have a margin of safety between the protection level and safety level. And it's in this case, this is a controlled flooding, a lot less important. And between the safety level and danger level, what dam engineers call the freeboard, and it represents the uncertainty zone until which a breach is possible but not certain. Anyway, this allows a better risk management in the area and a lot less damage until the safety level. Another example, different scale, again the USA on the Mississippi. So this Katrina was not related to a flood of the Mississippi River, but you have this huge spillway, Bonnet Carré spillway, upstream of the New Orleans city, that you can see that's been operating on the picture on the right, and on the left you can see the way that it works. So when this spillway is activated, the flood from the Mississippi River goes in the Lake Pontchartrain on the right, instead of breaching levees in the city of New Orleans, which is downstream. Then after the organization and so on, you need technical guidance linked on and based sometimes on the international guidance. Both for engineering, we need guidance for design, for constructions, for assessment methods, for risk analysis, for management of levees, defining inspections, defining maintenance. We need to increase the competence of the specialized staff, both the staff of managers, but also for the consulting engineers. So the role of a community of practice involving all type of actors, people from the science actor, policymakers, engineers, managers need to collaborate, to exchange information, to build this guidance together. And in many cases, this is done at the level, for instance, of the National Committee of Large Dams. Depends on the countries. And its role of this community of practice is really important because if all these different type of actors don't communicate, well, this doesn't lead to great results. Now a zoom about France. The history, the recent history, modern history of levees, well, it's not so recent now, but started in the winter of 1993 and 1994. We have two major floods on the downstream Rhone River, which flooded the Camargue Delta, and it's a beginning of the modern history of levees in France. So I've been involved personally in my team since this event happened because we worked on dams. We are close to this area, and naturally the state asked us to be involved in the decisions on repairing, and we've been involved with levees ever since in this area, but also in the rest of France after that. Then we have also other major floods. You have the list on the screen in 1999, 2002, 2003, 2010, which was a sea storm. And on the same river, frequent events, Agli River in 2013, 14, 20. The pictures on the screen is a bridge of Fourques, the same city that was on my first slide, but not flooded at the moment. So this bridge, you can see a picture, and you can see also all that was flooded during this flood event on the satellite photo on the right, with the location of 3 bridges on the system on the red arrows. So we found the same issues that I mentioned before. I won't say them again, the main levee-related issues, but it's a common finding in many situations. We started an inventory of levees. We found there is about 9,000 kilometers of levees, about 8,000 inland and 1,000 on coastal levees on the sea or in the estuaries. We have started a long process of improving the situation. First, we were involved as a applied research organization to help the local actors and the state. Then in 1999, we started the National Inventory and Database of Levees, the regulation which has been evolving progressively, the writing of guidance, either from my organization or from the National Committee on Dams, CFBR. Building of communities, France DIG, the Association of Levee Managers, CFBR, who started to include levees beside dams, not working only on dams, but as often as possible, creating documents either for specific to dams, specific to levees, or for both dams and levees. This community helped to improve the knowledge, improve the competence of the staff. We created a GIS for levee management. And one of the regulation attributed the responsibility of flood risk prevention to a specific level of local authorities, which is called in France GEMAPI, which is important because it avoids the existence of orphan levees. Before the creation of this competence, GEMAPI competence, Levees were managed more or less in different places, in different situations. It was not clear, it was not at the system level. Since then, it may be not easy in some cases for these local authorities to accept, but any case now, levies, we know who are responsible for them. And it's been a few years since this competence, GEMAPI competence, was created. I think the local authorities have begun to accept and to actually work with that. I have to mention also that not only they were given this responsibility, but they were also given the possibility to raise a specific tax to fund what needs to be done on levies. As I said before, management needs funding. So it was solved, and actually we were inspired by the organization in the Netherlands who are the water boards. I wouldn't be able to say the Dutch word for it. The water boards are also independent local authorities with specific funding. So technical guidance, you have on the left the International Levy Handbook. I'm happy and proud to have been part of the writing of this important document, 1,400 pages, specialists from 5 countries, reviewers for many more. That deals with most of the issues, of the issues related to levies. Maybe not in detail for everything. It's not the end of everything. It's just the beginning, but it's the first comprehensive approach to levies at the international scale. On the right, you have 4 different French guidance documents that my team was involved in any case. The first one is about inspections, maintenance, and assessments of flood protection levees. Then one about spillways. The third one is only one of the documents from a series of conferences. We organized three conferences specifically about levies in 2013, 19, and 24. We are already thinking about the next one. And so there is a lot of papers explicitly about levies. And the last one is about risk analysis of flood protection system. Just some examples. Unfortunately, all these are only in French, but the one on spillway has been translated. And the proceedings of the conferences, the abstracts are also in English. In terms of research and guidance, there are still open questions. We identified in our different countries a series of maybe the most important one, the most common one, or the most urgent to deal with. Investigation and monitoring techniques. You know, monitoring of a dam. It's fairly known today, but levees, contrary to dams, don't have water all the time. So monitoring is much more difficult for a levee, which is dry most of the time and wet only occasionally. It's much more difficult. So this is an important topic. Also assessment, risk analysis methods, guidance for inspections that is needed in many countries. Even in France, we have started to address this need, but this is findings from the International Technical Committee of ICOLD. Spillways is also very important in terms of resilience of systems above the protection level. Research on failure modes and scenarios, because too often it's simplified with the 4 classical mechanisms. overflowing, internal erosion, external erosion, sliding, but when they interact, it's much more difficult to understand. Transitions, the different transitions can be found in the levees, in a levee. Also, general issue with all type of construction, issues related to zero carbon building with materials and techniques, climate change, important. Levees can mitigate climate change, but climate change also has an effect on the levees. Many countries in Europe, at least, are finding that the climate change that we already see, more dry periods, more wetter periods and drier periods can create cracks in the levees, which make them not safe if the flood occurs soon after that. System approaches that need to be more integrated. Flood protection system is not only composed of levees, but we have also different components, like sometimes pumping stations, the spillways, gates. So at the moment, we deal mainly with levees, but we need to have a better integration of the different components, better knowledge and guidance on these other components that maybe in dams are also fairly known, but for levees we still need to address this. And also in general, in science of geomechanics, hydraulics and hydrology. And geomechanics, we have to look a little more about poorly known mechanisms like static liquefaction, fissuration, the different mechanisms leading to aging, because levees are here for centuries. Also, the issues related to transient modeling. As I said, levees are dry most of the time, so there's mostly no saturated area. How do you model a levee when a flood occurs? We know how to do it, but how to do it properly is much more complicated. We still need improvement in terms of knowledge and methods. As a conclusion, I'm about to write on time, levees can help against flooding, but they need to be given the same level of attention as dams in terms of proper engineering and maintenance to be safe, efficient, and not to increase the risk. Obviously, the effort can be proportionate to the protected assets. You will not spend the same money if your levee protects 20 people or 2 million people. Building and repairing levees is not enough if they are not properly maintained in the long term, which can be a challenge. ABRHidro and its European club has an important role to play, and I will give some details next slide, for sharing information and knowledge and also making progress together. And I hope that by sharing our experience in terms of the path we followed, we will help the other countries to take action before catastrophic flooding occurs. And I already said it, but it's important to consider that levees, protection by levees or even by dams is not enough. Flood risk management includes other instruments that need to be consistent. Final words about levees in ABRHidro and European Club of ABRHidro. I won't read everything because I've finished my time, but we have 17 countries now in the European Club. We published a report which is available. Much more important is that we have a website, a newsletter, we organize webinars, and it's not limited to Europe. We welcome contributions and members from all around the world for the website, the newsletter, and webinars. Because this is not possible at the moment to organize this at the ABRHidro level because of the status of the technical committees. But the European Working Group is a good way to share information in a regular way using all these tools. And the ICOL Technical Committee on Levees, which is much more formal, publishes bulletin, a first one about levees around the world, and one in 3 volumes that will be submitted for approval next year in 2026, comparing dams and levees on many aspects as possible. And we will present new terms of reference in 2026 to define what we will do after that, because we will have finished what we announced. And new countries, new national committees are welcome. So this is a call for all of you. Talk to your national committee. I'm not sure about my pronunciation, but Comité Brasileiro Grandes Barragens. So I would be happy. So contact me. And in any case, you can come to the next ICOL meeting in Mexico, in Guadalajara, in May next year. And as I told you, I won't read that, but there are, we can share the presentation, a list of references. So these are the main technical guides and ICOL documents, a few pictures, and other references, mainly papers from conferences. And by the way, you can see on this slide, important one I didn't mention before, the translation about the document on spillways, and on the right, the one of failure paths on levees, which deal with complex failure modes. And thank you for your attention. We're a few minutes late, but not so many as I was afraid. And I'm available for questions and further contacts also. There is my email.
Thank you, Remy, for your presentation. It was amazing. I had the pleasure to see your presentation in the World Dam Congress in April of this year. I have learned so much. It was a complete presentation, but thank you so much as you have customized your presentation for our Brazilian context and the issues that we have been discussing. So truly, thank you so much. I just would like to leave you a question for you to think after Richard, for you to answer, that Kenali has put here how the French system is organized when we talk about shared responsibilities and including among communities. He put here in the chat. But thank you so much. And I pass the floor now to Richard Varuso. Thank you so much, Richard, mentioning that he's from the American Army. He has a partnership with the Water Agency since 2013. It has been 10 years, and we have many projects for institutional development, technical capacity building, especially in the area of reservoir operations and economic analyses, the safety of dams, not only from ANA, but also many trainings that are being offered to the community of waterway resources and safety of dams in Brazil.
I wanted to just mention that Calvin is our manager. He's our contact point and focal point. He's going to also take part in the National Symposium on Water Resources, and we're going to discuss levees. Richard is a geotechnical engineer. He works at the U.S. Corps of Engineers. He started working there in 1994 with great work in the reconstruction of the levee system in the southeast region of Louisiana after the Katrina hurricane. He has a PhD in geotechniques, and he is the senior manager of the Risk Management Center at the U.S. Corps of Engineers. So without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Richard, and thank you so much. Go ahead with your presentation, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Can you guys hear me okay? Great. Perfect. All right, let me, well, this was working earlier. Now it's not giving me an option to share my screen. Oh, no. Let me see.
Just a minute, Mr. Richard. I'm going to try to help you out with your presentation. Now you have been enabled to share your presentation.
My apologies. I am clicking the share screen button and it is not giving me an option to share my screen. I don't know what's happening. Is somebody else still sharing? I don't think so. Oh boy.
No problem. Let's see what we can do. Let me see. Can you click on the share screen?
I'm trying to click and it is not letting me do it. I click the button and nothing happens. Oh boy. Maybe I need to leave the meeting and come back. I don't know if that would help.
Mr. Alan Vaz has your presentation on his computer. Would you like him to share it for you?
Yeah, he's got the PDF, and if you could just advance the slide for me, that'd be fine. If you can share your screen.
So let me try. Just a minute. I'm trying to share my screen. Just a second. I'm going to try once again. Can you see the presentation?
I have it. Thank you. Okay, Alan, well, thank you for helping me advance the slide. My apologies for that. I really don't know why that share screen button is not working. It's not giving me an option. So if you could advance the slides, that would be fantastic. Yep.
So, Mr. Richard, just go ahead and tell me whenever I need to change the slides.
Okay, thank you. So thank you again for this opportunity. Really looking forward to this discussion this morning. Remy had an awesome presentation. I think that our two presentations will be relatively complementary. I'm going to talk a little bit about the levee safety program that we have in the Corps of Engineers and how it was sort of established following Hurricane Katrina. As a few people mentioned today, it's one of the goals here, and one of the things that we see from disaster is the real need and the value in having disaster preparation and understanding the risks for levee systems and the communities behind levee systems, as opposed to that disaster response from not being prepared quite enough. So our levee safety programs and trying to evaluate our levee systems and communicating that risk to our sponsors and the public. We find it to be very, very important. So I'll talk about how that has advanced since 2005. Next slide, please. So just a quick reminder, Hurricane Katrina in 2005, it was a Category 5 hurricane prior to making landfall. One of the interesting things we see when it comes to statistics in coastal events like hurricanes, they refer to it as a Category 3 at landfall because that's when the eye makes landfall. But if you realize that once the eye makes landfall, half the hurricane has already made landfall at that point, right? So really, when it comes to Hurricane Katrina, the impacts were really a Category 5, and the storm surge and the winds associated with a Category 5 storm. You can see the sheer size of the event really had an impact on the entire Gulf and the states and the communities around the Gulf. 1,800 fatalities and about $5 billion, well, billions of dollars worth of damage, rather. And in those 1,800 fatalities, honestly, those were direct fatalities that we were able to estimate. There were many what we refer to as indirect fatalities. Hard to estimate those in advance, but we realize when it comes to hurricane events like this, or any other kind of disaster for that matter, you have fatalities and potential impacts from the actual water itself. But then once the storm passes, you've got things like famine and lack of people getting resources to medical care and those sorts of things. And then we have additional fatalities that can follow well after the event has finished. So those are things we try to take into account when it comes to preparation for events, whether they be coastal events or riverine. Next slide. So some of the initial lessons learned after the hurricane, that basically despite industry standards, we had a lot of levees that were built around New Orleans. It was not a complete system. That was one of the things that we certainly learned, was that a systematic approach. I think Remy mentioned that in his presentation. Very important to look at an overall watershed and an overall systems approach when it comes to trying to mitigate and manage flood risk. But those standards-based is not the only way for us to evaluate our risks. And so we know we needed methods for more detailed evaluations of the risk associated with levees, that being specific evaluations of the hazards and understanding of the likelihood of those hazards, performance concerns, how can the infrastructure fail? And if it fails, how will that happen? And if those two things do occur, a high hazard and poor performance, what can go wrong? What are the consequences in the levied area, and how can we try to mitigate those potential damages? One of the things that we realized also was that data collection and management of that critical levee infrastructure is very important. If those of you that have been around engineering as long as I have, or around flood risk management as long as I have, when I first started, and even in 2005 during Katrina, we'll try to pull data related to how the levees were designed and constructed as a means of us trying to help rebuild the system the first year after Katrina. And it was old books, right? Old design books that were scattered around the office in different people's file drawers and that sort of thing. And so kind of chaotic to try and find that data and try to make smart decisions, risk-informed decisions after the event. So very quickly realized that a central database for all of our levee information was quite essential. Also, we've stood up many centers of expertise. We find that to be very vital in us being consistent in the way that we evaluate levees and dam risk around the United States. We'll talk about that a little bit. And certainly for us in the United States, the federal government owns just a small number of levees and dams around the country. Many others are owned by local states and other local communities. So our collaboration and relationships with those levee partners is quite essential. Next slide. So I wanted to take a couple of slides and just give you my own little experience when it came to Hurricane Katrina, mainly because one of the things that we focus on in conducting risk assessments and trying to evaluate levees for the Corps of Engineers in the United States really is not just focused on the infrastructure itself, but really it's about the people that live behind the levee and the potential consequences associated with that, and how can we be better prepared to get people out of harm's way. So the figure on the left is what it looked like evacuating New Orleans prior to Hurricane Katrina making landfall. Our interstate systems, the highways that kind of go in and out of our major cities, we have something called contraflow. So we had all the interstate systems going all in one direction instead of interstates going in and out of the city of New Orleans. They all went out. And so my evacuation that would normally take me 2 hours to get to a family's house in the city about 2 hours away took us about 10 hours in this traffic, quite chaotic. Folks didn't really know how much to take with them. We knew the storm was going to be kind of a rough one, but didn't really know how much to take. So a lot of people were struggling to try and figure out what do they take with them, what important valuables do you take. Many people left all their valuables behind. Many other individuals felt they needed to take everything with them. So that creates a lot of stress. And then I had this picture of this cat. I'll give you my own little personal story. As we were evacuating for Katrina, I had 2 young kids and 2 cats that my wife we had to take the cats with us, even though we thought maybe we'll only be gone for a couple of days. The cats were not having it. They were not really interested in this evacuation. They didn't want to get in their cages. One of the cats kind of had his 4 paws on the outside of the cage, and I'm trying to push him in there. He's not wanting to go in. And so we leave the cat in the car, and he's so nervous and so afraid that he happens to mark and spray all on the inside of our vehicle. And so for the 10-hour drive, we had to deal with this cat that had sprayed this awesome smell inside the car, adding to the stress of the evacuation. So I tell you that story because, that's one story of the stress of the evacuation. And so there's millions of people or hundreds of thousands of people that evacuated for Katrina and many other events, and it stays with you. And so we want to try to leverage those memories of folks when it comes to being prepared for future events. Next slide, please. And so along those lines, it's been 20 years. This past August was the 20th anniversary for Katrina. And so many of the images you see here are still well in the memories of the people in New Orleans. Certainly what happened at the Superdome, that's the arena where we play the American football, the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans. That was a very ill-prepared opportunity for people to evacuate during the event. They were stuck there for many, many days and weeks before they could get help. And so, it's a very good reminder. Sometimes we learn from mistakes, we learn from failure. Certainly learned a lot from failure from the infrastructure itself, but we also learned from the failures of better ways to evacuate individuals during the event. And so, again, personally, I'd say that photo on the bottom right of that helicopter taking people off the roofs, I think the folks that are still around New Orleans since Hurricane Katrina realized that we never want to experience that again. I'll tell you that as I was driving into the city on the bridge over our lake, the sky was full of these helicopters, and it's an image that I will never forget. My city being in that sort of devastation, and so we try to want to make sure that folks remember what can happen as a better way to prepare for future events. Next slide, please. So for the rest of the presentation, I just want to focus on 3 primary areas where we really advanced our levee program following Hurricane Katrina. One is how we evaluate our levee systems, better ways to assess the risk, and potentially to design more resilient structures in the future. The overall organization of how we manage our levee systems around the United States. And then again, I mentioned that the federal government owns very few levees around the country. And so the collaboration that we have with our levee partners is a critical aspect of what we focus on for our program. Next slide. So in 2005, our primary performance issues, in addition to the fact that, again, the system wasn't complete because it wasn't completely funded, we had some hurricanes in the late 1960s that went through the Gulf area. And there was a beginning of some federal funding to construct levees around the New Orleans area. The system was never completed. It was just a little bit of funding each year to build a little bit of levee here and there. But the system was not complete, and which was a major issue in the overall flooding that happened during Katrina. In addition to that, though, we realized that there was mechanisms of failure related to flood walls that we know we need to address and come up with better ways to evaluate the likelihood of those flood walls performing as designed. And then, of course, the transitions and resiliency of the infrastructure ended up being some pretty critical ways that levees failed. So overall, we had overtopping of levees, overtopping of flood walls, and then the transitions were the primary issues associated with the flooding during Katrina. Next slide. So when looking at the hazard analysis, I'll just point really quickly at that photo in the middle. You see the new flood wall and the old flood wall. This is the difference in the hydraulics, how that changed, how the science had changed, and how our modeling has changed from the 1960s when we first started building the system around New Orleans until 2020, what it is today. So you see in this one particular area, the level of risk reduction for the same return period, it's about 20 feet taller than what we had built prior to Hurricane Katrina. So, we're really looking at better ways to model, looking at more statistical methods to try and get a better sense and reduce that uncertainty in the hydraulic analysis. In addition, we talk about the climate change, sea level rise and subsidence is a big issue along the coastal areas. So we've had a big focus on trying to understand what can this look like in the future. We have an understanding as best we can what the hydraulics is today, but we know that's going to change in the future. So we want to be able to plan and be able to either build taller or have plans to raise the infrastructure in the future, knowing that this sea level rise and subsidence is going to increase the potential stages on those levees going forward. And again, that's not just in New Orleans. That is something that we're looking at in the infrastructure around the country. Next slide. And so we did some research when it came to the way that the flood walls failed during Katrina. Our POW-supported concrete flood walls, we refer to them as T-walls or inverted Ts. Those POW-supported flood walls, we did a bunch of research from centrifuge testing and numerical modeling to come up with a more effective way and a more efficient way to design and assess those T-walls. Next slide. And the same research was done related to eye walls, just those sheet pile walls in the ground. They go to a certain penetration. We realized that mode of failure is something we learned, unfortunately, from failure during Hurricane Katrina. And again, centrifuge testing and numerical modeling gave us some pretty good insight on better ways to assess existing eye walls and potentially to design future eye walls going forward. So this is certainly one where we a lot of changes around the country related to eye walls. Many have been replaced. Many have been bolstered with battered piles around the country. And new projects typically avoid the use of eye walls if we can. Next slide. And then the last one I'll say related to moving forward here is erosion resistance and resiliency, realizing that the overtopping, as Remy said, we don't want to have an overtopping with a failure. We realize that Mother Nature can bring us events that are greater than what we've designed for. So we want to evaluate the potential erosion resistance of our infrastructure and armor behind the levees and behind the flood walls to ensure if it is overtopped that we don't get a catastrophic failure. Next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to move into organization. So I'll say that, for the Corps of Engineers, what we learned is that we want to focus on life safety. And so we want to do risk-informed assessments of our levees and really focus on those consequences in addition to the ways that levees can fail and the hazards, and focus on those areas where we have the potential highest life loss. The system approach and the portfolio management approach is a very important aspect of what we've done since 2007 as we've stood up this program. Adapting and improving. So as we continue to learn, we develop new trainings, new tools in order to help us better prepare ourselves for future events. Next slide. So this is a snapshot of the levees in the United States. You can sort of see in those faint gray lines around there, those are the division boundaries for the Corps of Engineers. They are essentially watershed focused. So each one of those division boundaries, you can see how the levees fall with respect to the district boundaries and the division boundaries for the Corps of Engineers around the country. So our focus really is to make sure we have the infrastructure in place, we have the expertise in place, and people that understand each one of those levee systems in those watersheds and manage that risk from a portfolio approach. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Next slide. So again, the Corps of Engineers, we've got 38 districts around the country within 8 divisions. And again, those are really based on watersheds. You can see that sort of green color in the middle. That's the Mississippi Valley Division, where the New Orleans district is. That's the focus there is that Mississippi River watershed, and looking at the rivers and the levee systems associated with that, and trying to manage that risk accordingly. And likewise around the rest of the country, that's sort of how we manage the programs. So there's a levee safety program manager at each district. There's one at the division level to help manage from that overall watershed approach. And then the overall program from the standpoint of policy, tools, and training is managed out of our headquarters office in Washington, D.C. Next slide. So our levees at a glance, I'll say that we have about 6,600 systems around the country. You can see that we've got about 33,000 kilometers worth of levees around the country. The vast majority of those are levees that the Corps of Engineers, United States federal government, was not associated with the design and construction of. We've got some of the levees that we call USACE levees. Those are levee systems that were federally authorized by the federal government, funded, and they have a sponsor. There's a local partner. So once the federal government constructed these levees and the construction was complete, we turned it over, and they now have the operation, maintenance, and risk management responsibility for those levees going forward. We provide a lot of guidance and assistance, so we'll still conduct inspections and risk assessments on those levees to help inform those decisions. But the overall operation and maintenance is by those local entities. So that relationship between the federal government and those local partners end up being very, very important aspect of what we do. You can see the statistics along the bottom there. $2.5 trillion worth of infrastructure behind our levees, and a lot of businesses, a lot of people behind the levee systems. Interesting stat you'll see is that the core levees, even though it's about a third of the overall levee systems in our database, that's where all the people live. Most of the people live in that third of the pie chart there, showing you that the federal government is really focused on evaluating and helping develop infrastructure where most of the people live, where most of the potential consequences are. And the rest of the levees are more agricultural, local levees where people are trying to, manage their own levee for the purposes of agriculture. Next slide. And so why do we do risk informed? Obviously, again, as I mentioned before, we want to focus on the hazards, performance, and consequences around our levee systems. This photo is in California, outside of Sacramento, and you can see there's a levee on both sides of this river. The hazard is the same. If you assume that the levees on both sides of the river were constructed the same, and that the potential performance estimates would be the same, where do you want to focus your attention? Well, we want to focus our attention when it comes to risk management on where the people live. That's not to say that those agricultural levees are not important. It's certainly important for the economy and for the people living in the United States. But if we have to make decisions with limited funding and limited resources, we want to focus our attention on where the potential life loss is first. Next slide. So the Corps of Engineers, so far, we've conducted about 1,600 levee systems. We've conducted at least one risk assessment on the 1,600 USACE levee systems around the country. We've done that in a few different ways. We have different levels of risk assessments that we conduct. We developed a tool, and that's the photo that you see on the left. It's our levee screening tool. We've advanced it a few times over the years, but it gives us a consistent way to assess the levee risk around the country. It gives us a good opportunity to brainstorm the various ways that levees can fail. Remy talked about that a little bit in his presentation, the various ways that levees can fail. We focus our attention on what the most probable ways for that to occur are. We make sure we have a good understanding of the hazards and the uncertainty associated with those. And then we model breach locations. And so that's the photo on the bottom right. If we have a breach in a location that we think is the most vulnerable, where does the water go? And how can we use that data to inform the public about their evacuation planning and ways that can potentially flood fight and try to reduce the risk of flooding during a specific event? Next slide. And we also believe that portfolio management is an important aspect. So this is a plot back from 2022 of the levee systems that are in the Corps of Engineers portfolio. You see on the vertical axis, this is the likelihood of failure, and the x-axis is our potential life loss. So we see that from the Corps of Engineers standpoint, we have the same standards-based approach for all of our levees when it comes to design, but the scatter that we have across the portfolio from a risk standpoint is pretty significant, right? So the lower left is low risk, and the upper right is high risk. And our portfolio, we span the gamut of risk. And so where do we want to focus our attention from the Corps portfolio standpoint? We want to focus on where those red dots plot and figure out how we can help those levee owners assess what the hazards are, what the potential issues might be, and how can we get people out of harm's way so we can reduce that life safety going forward. Next slide. One other thing I want to mention is a concept called tolerable risk guidelines. So in addition to understanding the risk and trying to make risk-informed decisions, we do want to make sure that these 4 pillars of guidelines are understood, and the recommendations we make toward risk management are focused on that. And primarily those are, do we understand the risk as best we can? Are we building awareness within the community? And are those individuals prepared to do the things they can do to protect themselves from flooding? Our day-to-day operations and maintenance, are we doing all the right things that we can do to keep the current condition of the levee up to speed? And lastly, managing and reducing risk. So using all the information we have to make smart decisions to reduce that risk going forward. And that could be reducing hazard, reducing performance issues, and reducing consequences. All 3 pieces of that puzzle are of primary importance to reducing risk. Next slide. I'll just quickly go through a couple of these, and then we're getting short on time here. We have developed quite a few centers here to help support conducting risk assessments for the Corps of Engineers and for our partners around the country. So the Risk Management Center has a lot of tools and training that we conduct, as well as resources to facilitate our risk assessments. Next slide. Next slide, please. And we also have a Levee Safety Center who performs very similar functions, but really focused on levees specifically. That Risk Management Center, they spend a lot of resources on dam infrastructure and risk assessments, as well as levees. And a Levee Safety Center is really primarily focused on the policy and organizational structures related to our levee systems around the United States. Next slide. And I'll just give you a quick snapshot of the organizations from the Louisiana standpoint, but this is a similar situation around the country. The United States is a pretty large country, obviously, right, with the number of levee systems and the levee owners that we have. It's not consistent about what that ownership looks like around the country. In many cases, they're state-owned, county-owned. Sometimes it's a farmer that owns a levee system. And so we have to understand in each one of those locations for each levee, who owns the levee, and what is that relationship like between the Corps of Engineers and those levee owners, and how can we collaborate in the best way possible? For Louisiana, prior to Katrina, There were 30 individual levee owners around the country. And in the New Orleans area, we realized that was too broad of an approach to take, that we needed a more consolidated version of managing levees around that area because of the potential risk. So we went from those individual levee districts to an overall state-run organization to help manage the levee systems around the New Orleans area, to prevent sort of the lack of communication and the lack of consistency that happened in levee management that existed prior to Katrina. So that's sort of Louisiana in a snapshot. But around the United States, we do realize that the ownership of our levees around the country, it's not consistent. And it's really important for the Corps of Engineers to understand those levee owners and what their level of understanding is of their risk, their funding potential, and what they have, and how they can manage their levee systems. And that helps us better have a good relationship with them to help them make better decisions related to managing risk. Next slide. So last topic here is we'll talk about collaboration. So pre and post event, we found it to be very important for us to find a way to collaborate with our sponsors, our levee partners, both before the event, during the event, and after the event, to help manage that risk. It's something to really think about when it comes to emergency action planning and how we can do the best things we can do to flood fight levee systems and to get people out of harm's way. Next slide. We mentioned the National Levee Database. So this is the first version of this happened in 2011. It's been improved many times in the past years, and it's an opportunity for not just levee owners but the communities to have access to levees in their area, the condition of those levees, and what they can do to help manage their own risk. Next slide. I'll skip through a couple of these in the interest of time. We just talk about There's a lot of information that gets into our database, and we try to be consistent about the data in there to make sure that it's accurate and up-to-date information. Next slide. Oh, not sure what that one is. Next slide. And again, in the interest of time, I'll skip this one just to say that we work with our sponsors and our levee partners to make sure that we're taking all the information that we have and help them make good risk-informed decisions. It's a process of collaboration that we find to be very important and very effective. Next slide. You can skip this one. Next slide, please. And just comparing the differences between dams and levees, this will be the last slide I'll talk about this morning. We have a lot of similarities between our dam and levee safety programs. The risk-informed approaches, the training, the overall structure, our tolerable risk guidelines, those are all very similar approaches that we take to our dams and levees. The biggest difference is really from the United States standpoint is, since we own more dams than we own levees, we're able to actually take those risk management actions from a construction standpoint on those dams. Once we realize what the risks are, how to manage that risk, we have funding available to us to help do construction and update emergency action plans. From a levee standpoint, because others own those levees, it's more about the collaboration, finding opportunities to have that collaboration with those levee owners. And then lastly, I'd say that the exceedance probability is very different, right? The likelihood of levees being overtopped is much more frequent than our dams. So the approaches we take from an overtopping standpoint, that really sort of drives a lot of the decisions we make on levees that are different than dams. So again, in the interest of time here, I know we're running a little long. I'll stop there and we'll see if there are any questions. We can skip this one and we'll just go to questions.
Okay, Richard, we have some time still. If you would like to complete about the system today, is this the last slide? I think it is, right?
This is the last slide, yeah. Yeah.
So if you'd like to conclude with this one, we still have some time, and then I go for the questions.
Okay, thanks. I just I didn't want to give people time for questions. So so I'll just say that in the New Orleans area, it was quite the undertaking to say that from August of 2005 to June of 2006, we need to get all the breaches closed before the following hurricane season. So the amount of effort that went into that reconstruction, I cannot say enough about my fellow Corps of Engineers employees and our relationship with our levee partners around the country, around New Orleans, to get that bolstered up. And then from 2006 to 2011, in just 5 years, the system was substantially complete. It took us another 5 years to really get everything else buttoned up. But in just 5 years, about 250 miles worth of new levees, flood walls, pump stations, closure structures, sector gates, navigation gates, all designed, constructed with the help of a lot of partners in the engineering community, the private community. And so since 2006, or even since 2011, the system has been tested a few times. We had a pretty big storm in 2012 called Isaac. And then in 2021, there was one called Ida. And so the system has had a few tests. And I can't say enough about the effort that was put into getting this system up to speed. I think it is one of the premier levee systems around the country. It's been funded well. The citizens that live in the New Orleans area, every 5 years or so, there's a new vote to come up with new taxes to fund maintaining those levee systems. And there's never a problem with getting that passed. The people that live there know that the money is necessary to continue that updates of that system to protect the city. So there's been no issue with that, which speaks a lot to the folks that live there and how much they value flood risk management in their city. So proud to be part of the Corps of Engineers, proud of what we've done here in New Orleans, and proud of what we've done really around the country when it comes to levee safety and communicating risk to the public.
Perfect, Richard. Thank you so much for your presentation, for your dedication. And I also would like to congratulate the Corps for all the work that was done in the protection of populations that rely on dikes. The case from Hurricane Katrina, I have been in this area for 20 years, and it really is a case of global commotion, and it really created this process of discussions, even international discussions, on taking care of levees and seeing the image. I can see that it was a higher proportion than what we have imagined. And in Porto Alegre, we had people that lost their homes for many weeks, and apart from many deaths, unfortunately, that happened. So we have many similarities between both cases. So it brings this commotion on us, and I congratulate you for all the work that you did to recover these areas and to improve the structures that should be more resistant for the next disasters.
But thank you very, very much. I'm going to pass now the floor to the audience and to also Christiane and Jussara for the Q&A session, and they can help me with the questions. It's important to listen to them. We still have 15 minutes, only 15. And then we have Mr. Soria, who is the president or the CEO of the DAM committee. And so, Christiane, the floor is yours. So I'm going to use my time to thank you very, very much for the presentations. They helped us a lot. We have learned a lot to see the technical level, the technical development, all of the control, mainly in the USA. They have mapped every single levee. The government has a lot of knowledge, yes, as was mentioned by Mr. Richard Varuza. Having data, having information for the managers is essential. It's vital. In his final comments, it has become clear to us how important it is to have sustainability, and from the financial aspect as well, to operate the structures, that is essential. and the population that most suffered with the breach, they understand that that infrastructure is rendering services to them, to their families, protecting their lives, their cities, their assets. And this is highly complex for us to do. Everybody has their own aversion, aversion to have more costs or spending. They don't like this, but we have to protect our population's lives. And thank you, Mr. Remy. You shared with us many examples of technical development, the importance of creating a community surrounding the management of these levees, the technical community, training people, creating manuals, creating handbooks, making all of this available to our society. Not only the public sector is going to make the difference, each level of our society, and mainly when it comes to engineering, it's very important. The role that we play is very important. I took pictures of many slides, the manuals, the handbooks, and Mr. Miguel Soria knows that this is a challenge for us. So we need to have a partnership with the ABRHidro or inside the committee. We have to make all of this knowledge available to the Brazilian community. I would like to pass the floor back to Alain. The questions, they are regarding the management, public control of the levees, but we also have many technical questions. So I pass the floor back to you, Mr. Alain. Your microphone is off. Thank you, Christiane. I'm going to mention the questions, and then I'm going to pass the floor to Jussara. So just so that we can save time. I apologize for the noise in my background. I'm going to pass the floor to Jussara because there's too much noise here. So Jussara, please go ahead. There is something in the background, some kind of noise. So we have a very important remark regarding the presentations given by the two speakers. I see the extreme importance of having the perspective of the system, analyzing the system as a whole, the levee system, and this brings to us a huge challenge because identifying the people in charge, the people responsible, identifying the people responsible, and how can we organize this set of stakeholders. I believe that this centralized center or entity or organization that can carry out this integration to integrate all the stakeholders and the sharing of responsibility with the local stakeholders, because they are long structures normally, and this management can be carried out locally, but we need to integrate all of the stakeholders. So it has become very clear to me, and we're going to share this with the committee. Another very important point, and maybe this is going to be discussed with our national water resources management, is the databases. Because information about the system, information about the levee system is different from the dam systems. So it's different to have a structure, in the flood area, the systems, because the systems are at very different places. We can have breaches, and we can include many stakeholders. How can we upload the information onto the system if we have many structures, many constructions? And this is going to be a huge challenge for us so that we can adjust our database. Yes? And I would like to say thank you. Thank you so much for this lectures. These lectures, they were true lectures, and I'm sure that the audience that the ABRHidro has, they are going to enjoy this learning, the knowledge that was shared, and everybody that could watch it. So thank you very much. And now let's move on to the questions because that's the most important. Thank you very much, Usara. Elton had asked about the differences between levees and dams. Mr. Remy has already mentioned that. So that we have specific legislations for dams and levees. The France regulates levees and dams in a little different. So do you believe that that is the best model? Should we have a unified model or should we have a separated model? Mr. Remy has already answered. He has already answered. But he believes that we should have a common legislation for the two. And there are some specific issues for dams and levees. Josimar also asked the following. He is asking both speakers. So do we need to have simulations and training courses involving the population as well as regards the evacuation? How often are these training courses carried out and who takes part in the training courses? Cassiano is asking about the renting of levies, the renting, are there parameters that must be complied with to avoid disasters downriver? And when we place levees along the river, you protect that city, but then you transfer the floods downstream to the cities that are downstream. And then the cities that are downstream, we have to analyze everything considering the watershed as a whole or the basin as a whole. So do you have parameters for the construction of levees? And what about the consequences of possible floods and the breaches of levees? How do you do this classification of the consequences? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just summarizing the questions. What methodology is used? And Josimar asked that. What are the technical criteria used to choose the best location for the placement of the levees? Because the levees, they are kilometers and kilometers long. So how do you do this? It is a technical challenge. So we have many questions, but all of the questions, they are related, and I was able to read all of them. If there are any other questions, okay, we can answer your questions via email. So I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Remy and then Mr. Richard. Remy, please.
I have trouble reminding all the questions. Probably regarding the last one about the situation of the levee, the placement, one of the main issue like dams is the foundation, the analysis of the foundation, in relation also to the protected area, what you want to protect. I must say one of the important thing, if you have the choice, is to put the levee as far as possible from the water. In order to avoid the problem of routing the flood downstream to other communities downstream. And also this lowers the hydraulic stress on the levee itself for both external erosion and also, well, for many reasons, it's best to have the levees as far as possible from the minor bed and take care of the foundation, but you can always deal with the issue of the foundation. And in order, another question quickly, the question of creating a levee, aggravating the floods downstream, it's true. In France, we have another regulation which is higher than the regulation related to levees. It's a water law. When you make something in a river bed, in a river valley, sorry, you have to avoid consequences on the other side or downstream. So if you aggravate something, you must take measures to compensate the aggravation. That's a general principle. It may be difficult, but that's for the creation of levee. But actually, in France and in many countries, in the developed countries, it is not the creation of levees, it's existing levees. So maybe I leave some time for Richard to give some answers.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I'll pick up where you left off there, Remy. Without a doubt, we refer to that as transferring risk. If you raise a levee or improve a levee on one part of a river system, it can transfer risk on the other side of the river as well as downstream. It is a complicated problem. I will say that one of the things that for us to start understanding what those impacts could be is really to understand what the probability of overtopping is, that likelihood of overtopping for all the levees within the system. That's your starting point to realize what the impacts could potentially be. But we do have a lot of laws in place in the United States that are aimed toward preventing that transferred risk. A big challenge we have is that during a flood, you may have one community that has maybe a lot of resources to raise that levee to prevent it from overtopping. And it's very difficult to manage and stop that from happening during a flood event because they're trying to save their constituents. They're trying to save their community from flooding. But unfortunately, what happens is you potentially move that water downstream or maybe overtop the levee on the other side of the river. So it is something that we try to discuss prior to flood events. That's part of our risk communication process. It's part of our engaging with our communities and engaging with our levee owners is to talk about that potential of transferring risk. So there's more conversation that happens before any modifications to levees or any flood fight actions happen during the flood event. So it's not an easy answer, but it's certainly something that we need to start assessing, or you should really think about starting to assess and having a game plan to talk about that prior to events. I'll say from the standpoint of where you put the levee, like Remy said, in many cases, as far away from the river as possible, for sure. The foundation conditions certainly justify or guide a lot of those decisions. But the more capacity you can have in the river, the better. The reality is that people, they want to maximize their ability to live by the water, right? So in most cases, while we say that's the best way to go, in most cases, the levees are about as close to the river as they possibly can be. And in many cases, that's why people build flood walls, because they're trying to maximize the use of the land. It is one of the challenges when it comes to managing flood risk is that people are drawn to water. They want to live by the water, either for recreation or for agriculture or navigation. People want to live by the water. So trying to talk about the smart ways to develop infrastructure related to levee systems is a key part of those conversations prior to improving levees or building new ones.
If I have some time, I may add something about to go forward from what Richard just said. One of the things that could be taken into consideration if you move away a little far from the river is that you can create natural environment between the river and the levee. And some people are sensitive to that. It might be a good argument in addition to the hydraulic, purely engineering side. But on the environmental side, it's a good thing also to explain, to justify moving the levees away from the river.
Perfect, Remy. Thank you, Richard. Thank you. We are getting to the end of the event, but I would like to share a last question from Christiane and Jussara, who are moderators with us, to give their final remarks, and then the final remarks by Remy and Mr. Richard, so that they can make their final remarks. So Christiane, Jussara, and then thank you, Alain, for the organization. Thank you to the ABRHidro. Thank you, Anna, that they are paying for the translation. Thank you for the translation for the event. It's going to be made available to all to make it more accessible. I would like to greet and say goodbye to Jussara. Great work. Count on us here at the National Council. Count here with Anna, the National Water Resources Agency, and my regards to all who participated. As the speaker said, this work is constant. We have to do it together. Let's mobilize everybody and all the technicians from around Brazil so that they can help us with these challenges. Mr. Remy and Mr. Richard, thank you very, very, very much for your kindness, for being here with us, sharing your knowledge, and that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Christiane. Now, Jussara. So our challenges, unfortunately, we have this issue because of the tragedy we had in the south of Brazil, in the state of Rio Grande do Sul, whose capital is Porto Alegre. But we are here, we are available, we are willing, trying to overcome this and get in line, as people say. We want to get in line. A third remark that I would like to make, and something that attracted my attention, was exactly how to manage the risks, how to calculate the risks. We have to learn how to work with that in Brazil, how to manage and assess the risks. We're still beginners. We're still beginners in a few areas. And I would like to thank the speakers once again, and I would also like to thank Christiane. Christiane is the director of the Water Resources Agency, but she has been our partner for many, many years in this development. She is a highly qualified professional in this field, and I'm sure that in the position that is holding now, she's going to support us all the time at the council. And that's it. I believe that's it. So I would like to thank Mr. Richard, Mr. Remy, my regards to both of you, and our thanks to you for the huge learning. Thank you. My regards to all.
Thank you, Jussara. And count on us also. I would like to pass the floor once more and thank you for the time, Remy and Rick. If you could, Remy, just to talk about briefly something that was open, it was even answered in the chat, which is how France organizes itself regarding the safety of levees. Is it the same entity that works with dams? Is the legislation the same? This is a question that you have already answered, but if you could explain the French model of governance, I would thank you. In the same for Rick, and then your final remarks so that we can close. Thank you so much.
Okay, so the framework for the regulation is the same one for dams and levees, but just the frameworks. The details are different for dams and levees. In terms of roles, responsibilities, it's clearly defined. You are mostly two responsible. The local manager is a organization responsible for the safety of the levees, for its performance, and for doing everything to maintain that. And the state, on the other hand, is responsible for controlling that the manager make what they have to do what they have to do properly, and they control. And managers rely on engineers, which must be accredited by the state. They must be specialized in dams and levees. While the local state organizations in charge of the control, they rely on the help of specialist engineers like my organization and other ones, public organizations at the national level, to give them expert opinion. So you have, these two sides with their experts. That's the way it's organized. I noticed that Richard mentioned the owners. In France, the owners of the levees have no responsibility related to the levee and dams regulation, while on the other hand, dams, the responsible body is the owner, not the manager. So it's one difference between dams and levees. Why? Because levees are very long, and in the levee system, you can have hundreds of owners, and it's not manageable to have 100 or maybe 1,000 responsible individuals in charge of the safety of the system. If only one is not doing his job, it's useless for the others to do. I was in the Delta of California, and I saw these privately owned levees, and you have sketches of levee properly maintained, and just besides some kind of very poor management. So that's the basic principle. I could talk about for a much longer time, but we don't have this time. This is a general principle. And as my personal conclusion, I want to thank again you for inviting me, for the opportunity to share and to also learn. Also, I think the presentation from Richard was a good complement. We had some intersection, but not so much, and more detail on other things. I hope this will be all full, and I'm available later for answering to questions, maybe by email, and also for collaboration, maybe also including in iCode, or to help you with the development of your own framework in Brazil, because in France I know all the history. I was part of everything since the beginning in 93, so it may save some time, maybe if you can avoid some steps. Okay, thank you.
Okay, regarding the difference between the dams and levees, as Remy said, it is quite a complicated question to answer, but in the United States, I would say the organization, the way we assess the dams and levees, we try to take a consistent approach. We do want to, the risk assessment is the primary focus. Certainly dams fail in a very different way than levees can fail. The infrastructure with dams is different with the spillways and the various aspects of how we manage and operate dams. So our subject matter expertise, we have different people that are really specifically focused on understanding dams, and then other folks regarding levees. But in general, the risk assessment process is the primary focus. The ownership, again, as we mentioned, it's the opposite when it comes to France and the United States. That was why we thought the National Levee Database was so important, to understand where the levied areas were for each one of those levees, how many owners were associated with each one of those systems, and to try and get that collaboration going, get that communication going between each of the owners on those systems. We find it to be a very important aspect of what we do as the federal government, is to enhance that collaboration and relationships between the Corps, the federal government, and each one of those levee owners. So that's a big part of our levee safety program, is that communication. I hope that answers the question as best I can in a short period of time. My closing thoughts are, again, as everybody else said, really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys this morning. Hope that was helpful. We'll offer our time to you if there's other collaboration that we can have in the future to help you guys build your levee safety programs over time. Happy to help. I will say this, if you just recently had a flood event, that means it's fresh in people's minds. It's fresh in the minds of the leadership. It's fresh in the minds of the government. take advantage of that. Take advantage of that momentum that you potentially have right now. People, when a disaster is fresh, that's the time to get change made. So don't lose that opportunity. Take that momentum and see what you can do to build your progress, because it sounds like now is the time.
Thank you. Excellent lessons for us, both from the United States as well as friends that have already gone through similar disasters and have a history of construction, reconstruction, and perfectioning of their governance and levee security. Thank you, guys. No, so let's now go for the closure once more. Thank you, guys, Remy, for being available, for your partnership, the way that you were available for future partnerships. Certainly, we will continue in contact. To Richard also for his dedication and his availability. And certainly, we're going to have more dialogues going forward. Thank you to the core that has been supporting us with the interpretation process, the National Water Agency, that also supports the event, our moderators, coordinator from the Commission of Dam Security, Cristiane, and the directors, Jusara. I thank all of the people who have participated, who sent questions, you have enriched the discussion, the debate. And lastly, ABRHidro for this space, for giving us the opportunity to discuss this theme that will be taken forward. Thank you so much. I invite you to the symposium on water resources so that we can perfect the structures here in Brazil. And also thank you to the interpreters. They have done an excellent work here. They have helped us, and this helps us to disclose knowledge. I would like to leave the message here that the recording will be made available soon on our website, and also the presentations will be sent here to participants. Thank you, everyone, and we are now closing this event. Good morning, everyone.